Good morning, this is Sean Keenan speaking to you from the wonderful surrounds of International Living's world headquarters here in the southeast of Ireland. And I'm just back from a trip which I took about a week or so ago to the small country of Wales. We're hearing more and more, and we're certainly feeling it ourselves, that long distance air travel it's not the luxury it used to be. Maybe in the 1960s and 1970s, it was considered quite a luxurious thing to be able to get on an airplane and go to another continent. Well, if you've done that yourself recently, you'll probably agree with me that it's not a very luxurious experience. In fact, it's not a very pleasant experience, something now that you just want to get through. When you consider lining up for security and passport control and then getting to a departure lounge where you have to sit around for hours upon hours before you get on your fairly cramped and usually quite uncomfortable plane and eventually get to your destination not feeling terribly well, and you need a day or two just to basically recover from that, we thought, well, what's the alternative to this? There must be alternatives to this. And of course, we didn't invent the concept of slow travel. People have been doing it for a few years now, so we just thought, okay, let's just do a slow travel trip and find out what it's like. So that's what I did. Good morning, Sean Keenan here from International Living, and I'm on editorial trip here right now I'm in the north west of England, and I'm going to try and restrain myself on this trip, particularly this Chesterfield, from going too crazy about how gorgeous the architecture is, because I know that's my particular interest. It may not be everybody else's interest, but I can't stop myself here, because right across this little street, this is Bridge Street and this is Bridge Place here, and this is just like a fairly well-to-do market town in northern England, but it's not considered terribly special. It's just a sort of a working town. I feel it's actually got something like, to me it's almost like the secret Stratford-on-Avon, because right behind me here you just see a beautiful example of Tudor era building with this wooden slatted, oak slatted sort of housing thing with the wattle and daub in between it. It's a specific style of architecture which we can date to the Tudor period, which is Henry VIII, Elizabeth I, Shakespeare. It's that kind of era. But these are not museum pieces. That's just a pub or a hotel. But what I also love is that there's a whole load of eras of wonderful things to see here in Chester, like just right across the street from it, we're into this, which is, a much later style of architecture. This is Georgian stroke Edwardian, even getting onto Victorian period, but I think a little bit earlier. So we're talking about like 1800s there. Fair enough, beautifully done. But when I come up here, and let's see if we can just get up. I haven't even been here yet, but let's just see if we can get up here. Because these walls, which you see behind me here, these town walls, these are Roman. These were built by Roman legionnaires. Roman centurions were expected in the Roman era, Empire era. They were expected not just to be fighters, but they were expected also to be builders as well. And when the Romans came and settled the place, and Chester actually comes from the Roman word Chestre, or the Latin word Chester, which simply means town. So they came here to northern England, and they founded this town and called it Town, because it was one of their principal towns here. You can walk along these Roman walls, along here by the River Dee, and I'm not saying it for there's no great, I don't really have any great point to make out of this, only that it's just really beautiful. It's really relaxing and calm, and it's a wonderful place to come and just, soak up the atmosphere and walk along Roman walls, walk in and around and through Elizabethan era buildings, Tudor era buildings, and then also have all this really rather handsome Georgian brickwork as well to find yourself among. And this river, doesn't this just look like something from Tales of the Riverbank? We have willow trees on the other side. I think these are plane trees on this side. Paris plains, I think. And you know, you couldn't find me in a happier frame of mind than here. It's wonderful. And I don't know if this is quite what people think about when they think about coming to England. Maybe you've been to London, maybe you've been down to the south coast. But I very much recommend branching out a little bit. And if you can make your way here to Chester, I really do recommend you do so. Also, we're only about 20 miles away from Liverpool. And we're only about, I think 10 miles away from North Wales. Right on the border of North Wales here. Chester is one of the last towns in England before you get to Wales. And do make a side trip if you come to England and come and see Chester, because there's not really anywhere like this. Something you always get a feeling in England, in certain parts of England anyway, when you come along, is just these layers and layers of deep history that you get here. Right behind me is this is Chester's Cathedral. There's been a cathedral or a church on this site for at least 900 years, but what you see here is the most recent reconstruction or version of it, which is 14th century. So let's talk about the period of around about 1350 through to 1390 or so. It took until this was actually finished. This is on the site of a Benedictine monastery, where there had been, prior to that, there had been a church, their own church and their own monastery and their own abbey. But again, I'm walking along the Roman era walls. And these walls were built in the 3rd century. We just walk through and they get into some probably 17th, 18th century houses here, townhouses. And now we have even more Chester history from another era of Chester's history and from England's history, and let's go further and say the world's history. What are we looking at here? We're looking at a canal, and the canals are absolutely associated with the Industrial Revolution of the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries, which happened, you know, you can extrapolate a certain amount from why did the Industrial Revolution happen here in England, Germany, Holland. Well, a large part of that was to do with Protestantism. And I'm not going to get into the details of that, but the Protestantism brought with it a certain acceptance of mercantilism. You know, making money was considered to be godly, and new ways of making money were even more godly. That's a gross oversimplification, but please indulge me in it because I don't have time to get into further detail about it. But anyway, what happened was we're in Cheshire now. We're in Chester, which is in the county of Cheshire. Right next to us is the county of Lancashire. And whilst Cheshire was not necessarily right in the very centre of the Industrial Revolution, Lancashire certainly was. Lancashire, let's just think what happened in Lancashire. Stockton to Darlington, the first ever railway, the first ever steam train to be laid, went just from 2 small towns within 50 miles of here. And from that, steam travel, steam as a way of moving stuff from one place to another, steam as a way of powering factories, powering mass production, all derived from the steam engine, which was developed close to here, or at least was put into function close to here, right in the very origins of the industrial era of our human history. And it all stemmed from places like this. And what's this canal got to do with it? Well, the canal has to do with moving coal and heavy products, but largely coal, to fuel those large steam engines. And you see one here. The north of England, the south of Wales is crisscrossed by these canals, and these became part of the landscape of the modern era. And this is yet another accretion of history, because right now I'm walking along a canal towpath. This towpath, the irony being that these towpaths were built for horses to drag barges full of coal along them to bring that coal to places where the Industrial Revolution was happening. The steam power itself didn't make it to the canal boats for another 100 years or so afterwards. It wasn't, horses were considered perfectly viable, a perfectly viable way of moving the fuel to where it was needed. And now, of course, that we have a highway, motorway system, a different network of transport of moving heavy goods. These canals are not abandoned, they're largely used for recreational purposes now. I think in certain countries in Europe, in Holland and Germany, for example, the canals are still used very much as a way of industrial transport or moving industrial goods. But right here, this one is more recreational. I can hear a riverboat coming along the way now, so I'm going to just turn the camera and you can see the recreational use of riverboat. Sycamore trees here. The oaks were in the cathedral courtyard. I think we'll go to the cathedral next, and then I'm probably going to get fatigued with the whole historical thing, and I'm sure you're getting fatigued with the historical thing. I hope you're enjoying this. I hope I'm not boring you. If I'm boring you, please just fast forward the video. But I love the history when you come to England. So we've just arrived in the village of Betws-y-Coed, and I'm already smiling because I love this place. The railway station is right behind us there, and we've come from Snowdonia Junction, north of here, all along the valley of the Conway River, which is surrounded on both sides by these sort of low mountains, but they're beautiful mixed forest covered mountains, and it's an outrageously beautiful train journey. I really would recommend it if you do nothing else in North Wales. Do come along that and take that journey from Snowdonia Junction to Betws-y-Coed here and come to this delightful little village. Now, it's not a secret. You can see from the amount of people who are wandering around here behind me and around me that this is a resort. This is a well-known place, and it's been a popular place to come for hundreds of years. But for a very good reason. It's very pretty. Something really enjoyable about Betws-y-Coed is that it is crowded because it's a very well-known spot for coming and walking and hiking and getting into the countryside. But within moments, it's very easy to get out on one of these trails and suddenly get away from all of that very quickly. This one just comes almost directly from the village, and I won't see a car again for a few miles anyway. It's lovely that all of a sudden you break the tree line and just come out into this clearing in the open skies, and there we have, for the first time since I've got here today, there we have a view, proper view of the Snowdonia, of the mountains of Snowdonia, because we've been in the green foothills from Betws-y-Coed for the last 45 minutes, just coming up the slopes directly from there, which are steep, but they bring you out here relatively quickly, and bang, into an entirely different landscape here. No longer in the valley, we're up in the uplands now, and it's so refreshing. The silence is remarkable, and I'm just going to show you something now. Have you seen it? The lake? Let's get down there. Not really sure how much point there is in me talking about this. You've got the pictures, you can see for yourself. Listen to the silence of it. I say silence, but of course now once you take away the dominant noises that we're used to, you start to hear nature sounds. I can hear birds. I'm not going to go anymore. I'm not going to try and identify the birds. I think they might be chiff-chaps, but I'm not sure. By the way they're flying, I think some of them are swallows or house martins. This is... No, I'm not even going to try and describe it. I said I'm not going to try and describe it. There may be some people watching this and thinking to themselves, "Hey, you know, gosh, you call those mountains, they're nothing. You know, I live in Montana, or I live in Wyoming, right in the hills of in the Rockies, or maybe you're from British Columbia, and you're thinking the same thing." And you know, I will admit, they're not high mountains by any means. There's none of them are over 4,000 feet high. They're not the Rockies. They're not the Alps. They're certainly not the Himalayas, but there is a connection to the Himalayas here, in that the expedition, which in 1953 summited Everest for the very first time, which we know Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary were the first people to successfully summit Everest, and that team was not actually led by Edmund Hillary. It was led by a man called Hunt, and I think it's James Hunt. I'd have to just, off the top of my head, I can't quite remember his first name. It was James or William, or a good solid English name like that. Well, they didn't do their training in the Himalayas. In fact, it took many goes for them to get there, because of course they started out the intention to climb Everest right back in the late, in the 1930s. But there was this interruption. The Second World War stopped people from getting out into the Himalayas, stopped the climbing groups to get out to the Himalayas. And there was quite a rush actually when the Second World War finished in 1945 to try to get climbing permits to get into the Himalayas. And in fact, this, post-war world in the Indian subcontinent was a very turbulent place, because you had two things going on, which was the post-colonial period in which British rule had in India came to an end and left a vacuum of power that, well, allowed a huge amount of turbulence, political turbulence, to take over in what was actually just one great big country at that time, and it led to the partition of India into Pakistan, Bangladesh and India as we know now. Anyway, that's a huge digression, one of my usual huge digressions. But anyway, it took until 1953 before, well, it took until 1952 before the Hunt expedition could manage to get out to the Himalayas again to have another crack at Everest. They didn't get it on that occasion. They did actually manage to summit in 1953, Jubilee or coronation year of Queen Elizabeth II, which had a sort of certain extra significance. But anyway, what I'm getting to is that team trained, did all their climbing techniques, all their climbing training here in Snowdonia. So these mountains, although they are small in size, they're not an easy climb. They're not all an easy climb. Firstly, because in a lot of cases, they're very, very steep. And in a lot of other cases, sorry, not in any other cases, the additional factor is that you're climbing almost from sea level. So in fact, although it's only a 4,000 foot climb, you're actually doing it all, almost all. So it turns out that these mountains have got pedigree, and they certainly have got and have earned their place in the history of mountaineering. And it's wonderful to be walking in the same footsteps as the likes of Hillary. I'm going to stop talking, I'm just too out of breath. There's a certain degree of relief about this. This is the North Wales I'm more used to. This is the Snowdonia I'm more used to. Yesterday it was such clear, beautiful weather. It was, you know, in the 70s Fahrenheit and such a beautiful day. But that's not really what it's like here most of the time. And these mists and pastures are absolutely what it's all about up here. So today we're in some of the higher peaks. I'm right on Snowdon at the moment, on my way up, just at the very start of the ascent of Snowdon, which is the highest peak in England and Wales. This stuff really nourishes your soul. I hate speaking in terms like that. That's just not my natural way to express myself. But I can't think of another way to say it. It just nourishes your soul. And, you know, it does so in a way that this is not like, this is hard-earned pleasure, and that's just so much more soul nourishing. This isn't like jumping on a jet ski in Dubai or ziplining across the canyon in Banos in Ecuador or something like that. This is real drudge walking for a lot of it, you know. It's some of those sections there, they're not classically pleasurable in the sense that you know, they hurt your legs, they're hard going, but as you go along you just realize you're getting into spaces like this that I think the human condition needs. This kind of thing once in a while. Some years ago, I think it must be more than 5 now, I published my first ever article for International Living in the magazine, my first byline, and it was about my pick of the 5 best beaches in Europe. We called it an insider's 5 best beaches because I really took the opportunity to try to mention a few beaches that I don't think would normally feature in guidebooks. There was one in right in the north of Ireland, and another one in Lanzarote, I remember. And I do remember also putting a river beach in Portugal, in central Portugal, into that article too. But I'm looking down at me now and looking at this one, this Welsh lake. And if I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but if there's a blue, dark blue green color to that lake, which I can see, I hope the camera can pick it up, that's actually due to the copper ore, which is naturally found in the mountains here. And it's a good time to fill up a little bit. I have got from Betws-y-Coed, from the bakery there, I have got a pasty, which is pastry filled with ground meat. It's an interesting detail about where we are actually in Snowdonia, because although we're high in the mountains here, we're really quite close to the sea. And my friend here, the herring gull, is proof of that very fact. You're a seabird. What are you doing up here? You're waiting. You're trying to get something of my pasty, aren't you? Yeah, you're coming from my pasty. Get away. I'm going to eat it. And this is an Eccles cake. That is unbelievably good. It's buttery and spicy. It's got sort of cinnamon and nutmeg flavours to it. It's gorgeous. And this is what you fuel yourself with when you go climbing in the Welsh mountains, because to tell you the truth, I'm not an energy drink kind of guy, and this will hold me and last me longer than any energy drink. Gorgeous. Yum.
Right, let's get off again.
Well, that's it. That's the summit of Snowdon. That road down the bottom is my destination. I guess I could get there directly down there, but I'm following this track. This is the Cribgoch track, and I'm following it down because I want to get to the town of Llanberis, which is further down there. It's basically where it's closer to my destination. It's a wonderful ridge, this, because right over there we have the lakeside. Over here we have the Llanberis side. And once again, just like yesterday when I went to the lake just above Betws-y-Coed, I'm not going to try and describe it. I'm going to let the images do the talking here. That is spectacular. That is just so spectacular. That ridge is the way home, and all that's left now is for us to get across the other side of it. So it's daunting. It's certainly going to be a challenge, but I know it's going to be very enjoyable too, because the climbing here has been magnificent today. And this is the saddle between the two ridges. I'm just going to take a little amble across here in the sheepland, and then we make the final ridge walk, and then it gets into Scree Slope, and then we get back down to the road. This is North Wales. And that's where we just were. That's what we just came down from, so it should be okay. This is a bloody challenging ridge, I have to say. It just goes on and on. It's not the precipice, it's not the danger that's the problem. It's just the terrain is difficult. The mountain of Snowdon is behind me. You can't see it because it's covered in cloud, but what you can maybe see is some of the ridges, some of the ridge walk that I've just been doing. And here's a couple of guys on this side doing the bit that I have yet to do. This is gorgeous. I am loving this immensely, and I have to say that yeah, I'm so glad to have had the opportunity to do this. So that's us down off the ridge now. That was an exhilarating climb, a couple of little sketchy moments, which I'm glad to have made it past. I just stopped because I wanted to A, capture a moment where the sun was shining, a little break in the clouds, and B, because we've just come out of one of these little deposits of quartz that you get on the mountain here, and it's hard to catch. Maybe you can see a little bit of the glitter of it, and they kind of look a bit brown from up here from close up, but when you're down on the track down there, they're beguiling because they shine in the sunlight. They just have a really bright white to them. They look like little patches of snow. And we're getting into the final sections of the descent now, and it's lovely to see it in proper full sunshine, because when we were coming up the other direction on our way up, it was all quite grey and grim, which is, you know, I say that in a disparaging way, and I don't mean it in a disparaging way, because part of the romance of the Welsh mountains is the fact that the weather just changes so quickly here, and you get so many different conditions. A lot of it is very moody and broody, and I will admit I like that about it. The ridge walk on Cribgoch was incredible. I didn't get as much footage of that as I would have liked. The reason being that for large sections of it I really needed my hands. There was a lot of it that you just had to be holding on to something. I'm a bit lost now. Have I lost the track? No, I've come too high. I should have gone low. Yeah, there's a lot of it that you really need to have your hands holding on to something as you grip your way across of it. Some of it's just a walk. Others of it is genuinely terrifying. I understand now why the guys who first summited Everest, or first successfully summited Everest, did their training here. There's a lot, and I guess in winter you can train here in really cold temperatures too, because the temperature difference right up the top was quite significant. It got quite cold there. It's lovely now down here. It must be somewhere in the low 70s, high 60s Fahrenheit. So anyway, it's been a wonderful day's climbing. Found the path again, good. Sean Keenan for International Living, signing off for the day. Gonna get this video home and get it edited and online for you to watch, so hope you enjoy it. To be beautiful old castle, 14th century castle. If we take a look across here, behind me is the island of Anglesea, which is where we're going tomorrow. I'm going to walk from Bangor, which is the town I'm staying in tonight, which is about 5 miles away in that direction, and we're going to go across this is the Menai Strait, this is called, and it separates the mainland of the United Kingdom from this island, which is Anglesea, and tomorrow we're going to be there. I've just had a lovely pub lunch. It's a tradition here, well, it's a tradition, UK tradition, to have roast beef on a Sunday. Well, maybe a roast dinner on Sunday, it doesn't have to be beef. So I've been to the pub and I had a lovely roast beef dinner with a pint of beer for, I think it was like less than £14, which is a pretty decent price actually when you think about it. That works out, I imagine that works out about $17. Great meal, lovely meal, and yeah, I'm going to take a bit of a walk around the walls here, continue on my day, and then get back to Bangor. Something I've probably mentioned already, I'll say it again though. Square mile for square mile, Wales has got more castles than anywhere on the planet. It's had a turbulent history, Wales. It's been fought over a lot by any number of successions of the throne of the United Kingdom or the throne of England and Wales have been fought over in these areas. North Wales here less so than further south, and on the east of Wales where it meets England. One of the reasons why Caernarfon Castle here is important is that in the time of Edward I, when the English throne did actually finally subdue the Welsh, and Wales became part of the Kingdom of England, or what later became the United Kingdom, as a sort of a way of almost humiliating the Welsh. The heir to the throne of the English crown was given the title Prince of Wales, and as we know, probably as you may remember now, the Prince of Wales, or the Princess of Wales, if you remember Diana, Princess of Wales, Prince Charles is currently the Prince of Wales. And Prince Charles, when he took that title, you're born to the title, but you don't get invested into the title. It's not official until you come of age. And Prince Charles was actually invested into the position of Prince of Wales sometime in the 1970s. I think it was around about 1973, in that very castle, Caernarfon Castle. And Caernarfon Castle is, it's largely ceremonial, but in some ways it occupies the same position in the English history or the UK history as it's let's just call it the Welsh Buckingham Palace. It's the seat of the crown here in Wales. But regardless of whether you're interested in that kind of thing, Caernarfon's a lovely place to come for a day. It's probably a lovely place to come for longer than that, but I've only got a day here today. Good morning, Sean Keenan here from International Living, and I'm currently in the town of Bangor in North Wales. I'm still on the editorial trip. I'm going to be taking a walking journey now to the island of Anglesea, which is in that direction behind me. We're getting deep into the suburbia of Bangor right now, and yeah, the traffic's calmed down a little bit and it's turned into quite nice walking. I don't want to spout a load of old cliches to you about slow travel and about walking, because they've all been said before, but there are certain observations that I do think are worth reiterating. One of them is, and I'm just going to give you an example right now. Look, lovely blackberries. Always like the taste of blackberries. That's not a very good one. I like the taste of them. I hate to see them arrive on the trees because they're the sign of the end of summer. Oh, here's a great one. This is honeysuckle. This stuff smells heavenly. And that's exactly the point I'm trying to make, which is, look at this. I've just engaged two of my senses as I journey along. I'm engaging another one at the moment as well, because I'm feeling the pull of gravity as I'm going down this hill here. So I'm having to like lean back a little bit as I go, and I think it's that kind of connection to the way that you're traveling that really makes it so special. That's the Menai Strait, and perhaps over there you can see, we'll see it better when we get closer, that is the Menai Suspension Bridge. That's the first ever suspension bridge to be built in Ireland, and it was completed in 1826, and the engineer was a man called Thomas Telford, who, if you know anything about the engineering of the United Kingdom, Scotland, Wales, England, Thomas Telford is a huge name in Victorian civil engineering. The man responsible for the building of canals, railways, bridges. be awestruck by the bigness of it all, the engineering. You know, this isn't as big as the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and it's not as big as the Brooklyn Bridge in New York, but it's way earlier than either of them, and just the sheer might and majesty of it are impressive. You can't just imagine having the scope of thought to be thinking in the terms of the mass that it needs to go into, the mass of iron that just needs to go into making something like this. Over here is a later bridge that's also crossing the Menai Strait. It's also crossing the Menai Strait, but it's not the Menai Bridge. This is the Menai Bridge. There. Now I've stopped in this particular place not just because I love a Palomino pony, they're so pretty, but there's actually a much more personal story for the reason I'm here, which is I'm in a place called Llandegfan, and in September of 1943 a young woman called Mary Keenan was here. And you may recognize the name. I'm Sean Keenan, she's Mary Keenan, and you might be able to put two and two together at this point, because Mary Keenan actually was not from Llandegfan. Mary Keenan was from about 50 miles in that direction, which is a city called Liverpool. Now, in 1943 September, as my grandmother, Mary Keenan, used to always tell it, Hitler was trying to drop bombs on her, and she took it rather personally, and so did the British government. And what the British government did at the time was, and for Mary, for my grandmother, and for many other women at the time, and children as well, was they took them out of the major industrial cities and port cities and tried to bring them to somewhere safer. So up here in Anglesea, only 50 miles away, was just not a target in any way for the Luftwaffe or for the Third Reich. So this was a safe place to come, and while she was here, she gave birth to my father in September of 1943. He was born here, so we don't quite know exactly where it was, but what we do know is that out here is the Menai Straits and the Menai Bridge, and the hosts, the farmhouse owners of the place where my father was born, suggested to my grandmother, Mary Keenan, to call her newborn son Menai after the straits and after the bridge. And I think my grandmother thought about this for a little while, and she sent a telegram to my grandfather, who was deployed on he was a Navy man, and he was deployed on the North Atlantic convoys at the time. He got the telegram saying, call, you know, your son's being born, we suggest calling him Menai. As far as I know, the telegram came back. It was a three-word response, which is the three-word response was, "Call him John." And I feel even through the generations and through the decades, this degree of humor in that I think carries through, and I like to think that is some sort of sense of the relationship between the pair of them. Hello. What a beauty you are. Oh, want to eat the camera? No, sorry. What? This is more like it. This is what I had in mind when I decided to go walking from Bangor to Beaumaris. I was hoping for little tracks and laneways like this. This is perfect. Made it. Liverpool Arms Hotel, that's where I'm staying tonight, but But before I go check in, let's go and check out the castle. Good morning, Sean Keenan here from International Living, and I'm still on the coast of North Wales. I'm still on Anglesea Island. This is the Menai Strait in front of me. I'm just taking a last little break before I head inland. I can't do it all on foot. It's a little bit too long to do that, but I'm going to do this first section from Beaumaris through to the Menai Straits, to the Menai Bridge, and then I'm going to head inland and take a train for the last little section of it. I'm holding up pretty well. The walking is taking its toll on my body, but it's not bad. It makes me feel, you know, fit rather than fatigued. I will say that my boots, my poor old boots are not taking it as well as I am. I guess, oh, there's the other one's going as well. Another day, another little lane to wander down here. Tiny little chapel, but beautifully vaulted. Such lovely things you find when you're going at walking pace. I feel utterly vindicated in the whole slow travel idea right now, because who would have found this? Normally you just come straight across the Menai Bridge and hurtle across in your car, and you'd look up and think, wow, what a wonderful structure, but let's get on to our destination, and you probably miss something as incredible as that. And that is St. Cilio's Church. And that actually, although that structure there that we were just inside dates from the 13th century, so that means built sometime in the 1200s. There's that silly inflation thing that we do with centuries. So it was built sometime in the 1200s in the 13th century, but it was actually established originally. That's a newer building established on top of St. Cilio's original church, and he was a hermit monk. We're actually on an island here, on a small island, which only really has the church and graveyard. And St. Cilio set up that church in the 7th century in the year 637. It's not all old world here. That tree is a Monterey pine, which was planted here about 100 years ago and came originally from the California coast in the United States. So some acknowledgement of the new world there. I'm walking across the bridge at the moment from one small island over to a bigger island. So this is Anglesea over here that I'm going over to, and that was St. Mary's Island. And this will all have been on this is all on a pilgrimage trail which went for centuries, from around about the 12th century through to the present day, from a town called Holywell, which is about 80 miles in that direction, and it goes to Holyhead, which is about 20 miles in that direction, and we're going to Holyhead later today. It's super satisfying using trails to get from one place where you're going, you know, where you've just been, to the next place where you're going. I don't mind at all going out for a loop in a forest park or something like that, you know, going out on a walk and starting in one place and coming back to that same place. But there's something more purposeful about actually going from destination point A to point B on your own feet. Even if it means you have to carry your gear, you know, it's not so bad. I'm staying in hotels, so it's not like I have to carry a tent and a roll mat and a sleeping bag, all of that sort of stuff. It's kind of like grown up backpacking this. It's like backpacking at a later stage in your life when you've actually got the funds, the wherewithal to actually pay for a place with a nice shower and a nice bed tonight, which is great. You know, it is like a little bit like revisiting your youth, except with comfort and luxury involved as well, which is great. Are you from here?
Yeah, I live from here.
Could you do me a favor? Yeah, I'm sure you know what it is. Could you tell me the whole name of the town?
Yeah, Llanfairpwll, Gwyngyth, Caernarfon, Gwyndraboth, Llantysilio, Go.
Fantastic, thank you so much. It's a very long name, and it's a place with a very long name, and it's not a very big place. What it does have is a railway station, and the railway station is the railway station with the longest name in the world. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down there and we're going to take a train from that railway station to take us to Holyhead. There's an interesting detail about taking the train from this place. I'm not even going to try and do the pronunciation. Locals here call it Caernarfon. Sometimes they call it Caernarfon PG. The entire name, I'll have a go at it when I see it in front of me, but I'm not going to try and say it now. The interesting detail about catching the train from Caernarfon is that it's a request stop. It's not a timetabled station, so basically that means you have to request that the train stops there. So I asked somebody at the train station when I was passing through before, well, how exactly do you request the train stops? So, no, just stand on the platform and wave your hand. As long as the driver sees you, he'll stop and you can get on the train there. So we're going to try it. I hope it works. Okay, I'm going to try it. Llanfairpwll Gwyngyth go Gerw Chian Drobwl Llantysilio go. Kind of proud of that. Worked. If you're not already a subscriber to the magazine, go to the link below and find out how to do so, because I will be publishing an article, a comprehensive article about the Wales trip in the December issue. So you've got time to subscribe now and get yourself a copy of the December issue. It'll be great if you could like and subscribe too, because that helps us get our videos out to more people, and more people get to learn about this wonderful place called Wales.